Trustee Rivers, you make sure the microphone's on there.
Okay, yeah. Are we all good? Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. Today is September 20th. You're here for the regular Township Board of Trustees meeting. Call this meeting to order.
Mr. Grumbles?
Here.
Ms. Taranto? Here. Mr. Rivers?
Here. Please rise and join me in the pledge allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First order of business tonight is the overlay hearing for RCOD 21-01 sheets. Trustee Taranto, if you could take over from here, we'd be recusing myself again for this application. Thank you.
I'd like to open the zoning hearing for RCOD-21-01 sheets. Do you need to take a look for that?
No.
Applicant, if you would like to
Madam Chair, you want to start with the staff update first?
Yes, I'm sorry.
And then if we could have the court reporter swear in everybody who's going to be speaking tonight other than applicants. Well, if you guys want to get sworn in as well, that's fine.
We're not having public comment, so it would need to be
Just staff and representatives from the applicant.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I did.
Ms. Bone or
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, everybody. This is the continued hearing for the Route 23 Overlay District RCOD 21-01, which is a request for a sheets development at the southwest corner of US 23 and Orange Road. The acreage is approximately 7 acres. And the current zoning is planned commercial office district with the overlay district of the RCOD. The applicant is requesting to pull the RCOD down, which is an administrative act of the RCOD overlay district. This hearing has been continued a number of times, most recently because of traffic concerns that were raised by a third-party traffic engineer that was hired by Orange Township. And we have prepared a comparison chart. Do you have that, Jeff, that you can pull up? Or you can pull it up, Michelle. It's a comparison chart that shows what has taken place since July 19th through today. The last time that we actually met and talked about this was on July 19th. They had some elevation changes that were a concern of staff's, and they have revised that elevation now to have a pitched roof in the middle of the elevation that faces US 23 to make it look somewhat more of a front facade, which is what the intent of the RCOD is. But they are still requesting a divergence from the roof pitch because they do not have 100% of the roof pitched. They only have portions of it being pitched. But they did add that little bit in on that bump out on US 23. They also did add in parking lot screening to comply with the requirements in the RCOD district, and they removed all the signage. We had concerns with the signage, and we thought it was in the best interest to remove all of that and bring that back at a later date. So that has all been removed. The traffic study has been revised based upon the third-party engineer's recommendations. And I guess at this point, I would turn it over to, I'm not going to turn it over yet because I need to enter exhibits into the record. But as soon as I enter these exhibits into the record, I want to have the engineers speak on their behalf of what they've done for their traffic study. So for the record, I am going to submit Exhibit 1, which is the original application, including the traffic study that was approved by the Delaware County Engineer's Office, and then a revised study that was submitted in August of 2021 based upon the Township's third-party engineers' comments. Exhibit 2 is the staff report that's dated June 7th and has been updated through 9/20 of 2021 and includes the comparison chart that I just reviewed today. Exhibit 3 is the resident comments. And Exhibit 4 is the traffic engineer's letter stating what his concerns were with the original traffic study that was submitted in February that caused them to revise and submit the revised one in August of 2020. We would like to have all of those submitted into the record so that there are facts and findings of this case moving forward. And at this point in time, I'll turn it back over to you, but I would like the applicant to speak on how they address the traffic ordinance. Mm-hmm.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is David Hodge. I'm a zoning and land use attorney at the law firm Underhill & Hodge. My address is 8000 Walton Parkway, Suite 260, New Albany, Ohio, 43054. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I know that a decision on this matter has in some ways been a long time coming here in the township. So appreciate the opportunity to be here and to engage to the extent necessary in some discussion about the application that is before you this evening. On October 5th of 2020, this board approved Article 20 of the Orange Township zoning resolution. This was an amendment to the zoning resolution that was initiated by this board. Your approval of that article came after an extensive process and a thorough process involving you as trustees, involving township staff, involving private consultants, involving the Delaware County Finance Authority, the Delaware County Regional Planning Commission, 4 hearings at your Township Zoning Commission, a survey that elicited 300 responses, stakeholder meetings, an open house, and various county technical agency review. So it was indeed a thoughtful and thorough process undertaken by the township. As it relates to the subject property, this corner at Orange and 23 is in the commercial and office sub-area of the RCOD, your Article 20. Section 20.06 provides the uses allowed in the commercial and office sub-area as commercial establishments of any type. Now, there are some exclusions in your prohibited use section, which is section 20.05, and none of the uses proposed here on this property fall within that prohibited use section. So, back in October of 2020, the decision about land use on this property was made. You said then, fuel sales are okay. A car wash is okay. Convenience retail is okay. Those are all permitted uses. So we're not here tonight asking you for a use that's not permitted on the property, because those uses are permitted under your code, after your thoughtful and thorough process. Now, there are some divergences associated with the request, and I'd like the opportunity to discuss those divergences that are to date part of the application with either or Miss Bonnie or Miss Maddie, because I personally, as a zoning attorney, have some questions as to the necessity of including those as variances or divergences in the request this evening. So, with reference to the trail, it's my understanding that the trail component is over just on the other side of the orange access point. And the reason I question whether or not a variance is a necessity with reference to the trail is that section of your resolution reads, multi-use paths and sidewalks may be constructed within the road right of way. So I'm not sure why we're asking for a variance to it. It might have been a consultation between the civil engineers working on this and staff, but to me, that is not a prohibition in your zoning. It says, again, multi-use paths and sidewalks may be constructed within the road right of way when allowed by the permitting authority. So, I don't think that we're asking for anything that's not explicitly allowed in the resolution. And to the extent we are, we withdraw that request. We can keep the path out of the right of way. So I would hate for any decision this evening to be based on a divergence, which I don't believe we need. Vague and ambiguous zoning regulations are to be strictly construed in favor of the property owner. Don't take my word for it. You've got a great attorney over here at the end of the table. So I don't believe we need that variance. To the extent we do, it's withdrawal or divergence. To the extent we do, it's withdrawal. We will keep that out of the right. Now, there is another section, and that's about the glass being used. And some discussion in the staff presentation, and maybe Ms. Maddie, you can bring that up, because the staff materials stated that initially when our application came in, that the wrong section was requested. So let's first clarify which section we believe we need a divergence to, and then my response will be based around that.
So and Michelle, if you want to pull up the part that talks about this divergence, you can. I don't have access to the screen, Mr. Hodge, but I am pulling up the section of the code right now that requires that variance. It is in section 2010. Point A, and then it is little Roman numeral 2, and then, little Roman numeral 1, and then C, where it says glass.
Okay, very good. That's what I was hoping your answer was going to be. Now, I want to read that section to you. That section says, the use of black, gold, green, silver, opaque, or any other reflective or colored glass on a building is prohibited. Frosted glass may be permitted in some cases, subject to approval of the Board of Trustees as applicable. I withdraw that divergence request. We don't have black, gold, green, silver, opaque, or any other reflective or colored glass on the building. Neither do we have frosted glass. I believe I'm correct, team? So I withdraw that divergence request. The next divergence relates to pitched roofs. And I want to read exactly what your resolution says with reference to pitched roofs, too. It says all single-story buildings shall have a pitched roof. Now, I wasn't in the room, of course, back in October of 2020. You all were, and Ms. Maddie was, and Ms. Bonnie was. I know Ms. Maddie and Ms. Bonnie had a very strong role in providing some zoning language for the trustees to ultimately adopt. So I don't know whether that is an aesthetic requirement. I don't know, Ms. Maddie, do you care to answer? Is that an aesthetic requirement?
That was not something that was originally in the regulations. It was requested by the zoning commission that it be added in.
And based upon aesthetics?
It was based upon previous preferences by that zoning commission.
Sure. Okay, very good. So it says a pitched roof. If we flip over to the building elevations, certainly the modified building elevations we can ask, it's like a tax thing. You can go ask 6 accountants the same tax question, you get 6 different answers. You ask 6 different architects whether this is a pitched roof building, I believe that it arguably is. Now, there are some architectural, ornaments here that don't all have pitched roofs, and there are some reasonably flat elements. I'm not going to say they're totally flat because water's not run off, so there's some pitch to those. So I argue that is a pitched roof. We'll leave that divergence in. It's an aesthetic requirement, and certainly the aesthetics of this building comply with the spirit and intent of an aesthetic requirement. So it's been a long time coming. Tonight's the time for a decision. I'm hopeful that you'll make the right decision, which of course I believe is to approve the request. Now, I almost hate to do this in some ways, but and I know Mr. Grumples, you mentioned a minute ago that you're going to recuse yourself, and I in no way, shape, or form intend to single you out. I know that you're not going to vote tonight, but I wanted to use this as a little bit of an example for the appropriateness of the township's action tonight. Several articles, as you all know, in the newspaper recently on this elections issue. And believe it or not, I applied for that. I love it as an attorney when I see someone who has the courage of their convictions. And certainly in terms of what you did, you have the courage of your convictions. You knew you were right. You took it to the Ohio Supreme Court. They affirmed your position. I applaud you for that. There was a great quote by you in that article, which I loved. And what you said to the Dispatch, assuming that the reporter quoted you accurately, you said, "The law prevails. The law prevails. Not your own desires or positions or personal perceptions, but the law prevails." Well, I stand before you tonight respectfully requesting that you follow the law you created after an extensive, thoughtful, and thorough process and adopted on October 5th of 2020. That law, Article 20 of the Orange Township Zoning Resolution, obligates you, legally obligates you, to approve this application before you this evening. That's all I have. I'll do my best to answer any questions.
Did you have anything?
Oh, traffic. Did you want me to speak to traffic?
Yeah, that's up to you, yeah.
Yeah, let me speak to traffic, and I guess that leads to another thing that I did intend to say. In terms of the way Sheets and Skilk & Gold, the applicants here have pursued this request, it's my opinion that they, in their own right, have been thoughtful and thorough, and have really and truly attempted to work in a collaborative way with Orange Township to introduce this use. Now, they came to it, and people got interested, and that can certainly heat up and change the discussion. But they've been thoughtful, they've been thorough. The board, or the township in general, requested that Sheets go back and do some additional traffic analysis. They weren't obligated to do that. We all know that the Delaware County Engineer's Office already approved this. We know that the Ohio Department of Transportation already approved this. That's probably in some of the exhibits that Ms. Maddie presented earlier. But notwithstanding the fact that this had all of those traffic approvals, we went back to the drawing board. Sheets went back to the drawing board with their civil engineer, and they essentially concluded, and this is from an August 17, 2021 letter, which all of you have, in which I request be a part of the record, that it included the levels of service and delay per vehicle for the 2041 design year analysis of the site driveways and key study intersections improved as compared to the earlier traffic impact study. So that's in summary what the additional traffic analysis bore out. Mr. Griggs, I don't know if you had something else you wanted me to speak to.
And the question, if you had anything else, just stated if you want to put it.
Yeah, so we sent Sheets, Skilk & Gold, and the property owner, Sheddinger Financial Services, submitted a letter to the board and to legal counsel. That letter included some of the additional traffic analysis. I frankly wouldn't mind to have the October 5th, 2020, Part 2 of 2 YouTube stream for the Orange Township trustees submitted into the record.
This exhibit
5.
September 9, 2021 letter from Underhill High, Exhibit 5. We'll make, just generally speaking, all the YouTube records, Exhibit 6.
Very good. And my colleague, attorney for the property owner, has a few things he'd like to add.
Thank you, David. My name is Aaron Underhill. I'm with the same firm, same address, and I am representing the property owner, as it turns out, Shedder Financial Services. I had a few things to add, really in furtherance of the traffic issue and the letter that was submitted. So I appreciate you listening here for a few moments. As you can imagine, the property owner and the end user's interests are very much aligned. My client is selling the property to his end user, and really, after owning the property for a long period of time, wants to realize return on his investment. But as mentioned earlier, we are in an administrative process. So there's an administration of the law. We're not making law here, which is a little different from a zoning standpoint, where a lot of things can go in terms of the reasoning behind turning something down. But we believe that the traffic issue that Sheets has addressed is really going above and beyond for them. It was something they weren't required to do. I wanted to go through some reasons why we think they have gone above and beyond. Really, this traffic issue, even though it's turned out the right way in the end with the updated study, is really not to be considered at this stage. Townships have no legal authority to regulate traffic. They are creatures of state law and must follow the Ohio Constitution, the Ohio Revised Code, and can only exercise powers granted to them by those authorities. Subdivisions govern the parceling and subdivision of land, and to quote the Revised Code, the division or allocation of land for opening, widening, or extension of public streets. Counties and municipalities are given the right to regulate subdivisions and therefore streets under state law. Glaringly absent from your township resolution are subdivision regulations. Nor are subdivision regulations found in any other non-home rule townships in Ohio. You will find subdivision regulations adopted by Delaware County, and it is the regulating authority on that topic here. Moreover, there are several Ohio Attorney General's opinions on the subject. One of which was from 2010 and was opinion number 8, says, the Ohio General Assembly has not conferred upon a Board of Township Trustees general authority to regulate the flow of motor vehicle traffic on public roads located within the unincorporated area of the township. Now, even if the foregoing were not true, traffic is not a consideration that is proper at this stage of review. Ohio case law is clear that traffic is not a relevant or proper point of discussion, especially when a property is already zoned for the proposed use. And of course, we know that your overlay does allow this use. According to a Supreme Court case, Ohio Supreme Court case from 1959, Colleen Realty Co. versus City of East Cleveland, it reads as follows. Traffic regulation must remain a byproduct of zoning activities, and the primary product must always be to ensure the greatest enjoyment of one's land, taking into account the rights of others and the needs of the community. Thus, if the present proposal is lawful and proper, the public authorities must find some manner of dealing with traffic hazards other than by curtailing the use of the property. There are other Court of Appeals opinions throughout Ohio that sort of sing the same tune. There was one in Cuyahoga County, and I can share the sites with Pete Griggs if needed. But it found it to be unconstitutional to refuse to rezone a residential piece of property at a busy intersection to allow for the development and operation of a gas station. And it was quoted as follows. Admittedly, traffic patterns should be taken into account when designing a comprehensive zoning plan. Now remember, this is a municipality, not a township, but same logic applies. However, when the subject property is located in an area burdened by heavy traffic, which is the case here in this case, and the conclusion has been reached that the property can be used commercially only, the problem of additional traffic hazards must be secondary to the right of the property owner to have use of this property in a manner that is consistent with its location. And here, obviously, this type of use is very consistent with the location. of other commercial uses and heavy traffic that already exists in the area. I understand, as with most places in America today and most places where we work, politics is always the number one factor in considering anything. A vote to disapprove this application will be one with a political motive driven by pressure from vocal opposition that's here in attendance this evening. In a policy discussion, one where law is being made, that would be acceptable and appropriate. But this has nothing to do with whether or not your constituents want to see this development happen. The question, this case doesn't. The question instead is, does this application meet the requirements of law? And it does. Any vote against it is an illegal, improper application of the law. Evidence of this can be found in your agenda tonight. There is a matter on here to set the public hearing to change the overlay district code to eliminate gas stations as permitted uses. Obviously, the public has spoken, and going forward, you can fix that problem. But tonight, we're vested in our right to allow this gas station to develop and operate, and therefore, we ask you to vote to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Rivers? You ready to vote?
Yeah.
I understand, gentlemen, what you're saying. I'm the one trustee on this board that's been here for 10 years, and I've spent millions of dollars on that intersection to make it safer. Adding that gas station is not making sense. It makes it worse. I am a no vote, and I'm going to make this resolution, and we'll see how Mr. Rivers moves forward. Which resolution number would you like me to use, Mr. Kraft?
308. 21-308. Yeah, she just says resolution 21-308. It reads whatever that resolution title is.
I move resolution 21-308, denial of application development plan under the Route 23 corridor overlay district, RCOD. Article, what is XX? 1D of the Orange Township zoning resolution.
Mr. Rumbles? Ms. Trantow?
No.
Mr.
Yes.
Try that again. Ms. Trantow? Mr. Rivers?
Yeah.
Thank you. Question.
I'm sorry, we do not have public comment, I apologize. I'm hearing,
I'm gonna ask a quick close.
I'm closing this hearing now.
Okay, I can take back over now that the hearing is closed. So we have public comments now. When you come, we're going to go back to the regular meeting. If you have public comments, please come to the podium. State your name and your address for the record. Hearing is closed. Yeah. And go ahead and share your comments.
My name's Gary Rubenek, 504 West Point Road. Okay, well, he told me to stay there.
That you're not on the record anymore here. You're on.
This gentleman here said somebody up here was losing themselves.
That's me.
Why?
I'm going to do an agenda change in a few minutes if you'd like to sit and listen to what I'll say.
Will it address it?
It will.
Thank you. Just an observation. Well, the gentleman left. There's a gentleman sitting over there. When I pulled out of my driveway, he was riding a bike on Orange Road. He beat us on the bike.
Any other public comments? Okay. Moving to agenda changes, I want to bring up, I know tonight we have a plan to discuss the overlay, but I think in light of what we heard tonight, in light of what we have proposed with the overlay, I think what we've learned is that through a series of applications, there's some holes. And so I want to, there's reasons I'm recusing myself. I'm not going to get into detail on, but I think there's an undisclosed conflict of interest related to the overlay. It stems from its onset, its the way it was developed, how it came to be, and that's based on personal experience and things that I've discovered in the past 6 months. Ms. Bonnie, I think going back to my first year in office when the overlay first started, you know, one of the things that was expressed by the board as a concern was that we were getting support externally to help expedite the process and ensuring that Ms. Bonnie had control over the direction since it was relative to Orange Township. In talking to Ms. Bonnie and the Orange Township team, there was a period of time where they did not feel they had the full control or authority of the process. We personally made a phone call to the county and ensured that that changed and verified that it did. So I felt good about the process at that point. Towards the end of the process, when we reviewed the content, as a new trustee and someone that was learning zoning and still learning, I think it's an ever growing field that you always learn and have to understand. I did see a gap in the overlay related to multifamily housing. And I immediately had concern over that. So I worked with Ms. Bonnie, if you recall, and we developed zones with unit restrictions that included existing properties to help foster and bring in commercial development that wasn't apartments, that wasn't multifamily, because that was the goal for me personally all along, was to bring jobs, bring corporates, corporations and commercial construction. And I think what we've seen is that we probably didn't go through and understand exhaustively what we were getting ourselves into. And that's me being accountable and you're acting candid and honest. And when we look at, what's allowed to happen and things like that, I understand businesses are going to apply, they're going to want to get in. But I also understand, in listening to some of the testimony, zoning should be consistent with the traffic conditions that exist. Now, we can't set traffic, but we can be mindful of it and we can zone accordingly. And so, based on everything I've said, I'd like to propose a moratorium on the overlay until we have time to resolve these issues. I would also consider, based on what I personally know, rescinding the overlay altogether and starting from scratch. I don't think that you fix things that don't have a solid foundation. I think you start over. And what I heard someone that testified tonight say is true with me. When I have conviction, I pursue it and I drive hard and I don't give up. And that's something that I think we need to do. We need to consider strongly. And so with that, I want to make sure that that's on the agenda. I want to make sure that it's discussed. And Trustee Taranto, Trustee Rivers, happy to have you comment as you see fit. I talked to Pete, one thing, I talked to our council about this. Those were the two options that he proposed. And there was ongoing applications that prevented this from happening earlier. And so tonight, wanted to handle this at the next meeting, but in light of the fact that it's 2 weeks out, I don't want anyone else to get into the application process with something that I think needs to be resolved quickly.
Difficult to do, there's always room for improvement, something to do, you always have these, looking at the policy standpoint. Obviously, this is something that there would be some changes to, and I'm more than willing to look at that and see what improvements can be made. However, the overlay was properly put together, there are no issues. You're aware that there are no issues, and you will not bring those up. I'm not sure why this conversation was even brought up today. But I'm happy to discuss policy and look at this overlay, what revisions need to be made going forward. But there is absolutely zero reason for a call.
I was never told not to bring it up tonight, Trustee Rivers. In fact, I had a discussion with our administrator over the agenda. Okay. So
it was removed.
It was what?
It was removed.
It was removed and discussed. I don't know if you were there when we had the discussion, but what was discussed is that if you recall. We'll play it by ear, and if we decide to make that move, we can handle it under what? Agenda change. You recall that conversation?
I recall.
Thank you. That's exactly what happened.
For my conversation with council, I'm okay with the moratorium. While we revisit this and, work through the issues.
And again, from all standpoint, I'm really happy to look at it.
And, you know, just for the record, I'm gonna have to resolution. So I think I'm going to make a motion that I can prepare something that does a couple things with the conversation. And then we have something that's ready to go for the next board meeting. You guys can present on it at that time if you want to proceed that route. But as with any moratorium, I highly recommend just simply not making it by motion because there needs to be information.
Can he talk up so we can?
Sorry.
That's only for the.
Okay. Sorry. I shouldn't have been leaning over then. My recommendation to the board is to allow me to prepare a resolution imposing a moratorium as opposed to simply adopting that by motion tonight. There's certain factual information that needs to be contained within that resolution to make it legally defensible, if you will. And we can have that ready in time for the next board meeting. If that's the desire of the board, that would be my recommendation.
My concern, if we stall another 2 weeks, is that if there's applications that come in, the potential trouble that will cause for both the applicant and the township. And that's why there's a sense of urgency on my end. And the only reason I went with the agenda change tonight and listened to counsel for the application tonight. And to be clear, I don't fault an applicant for applying for something and an overlay with it, it's there. And so, that's the concern I have. It needs to be very clear, needs to be addressed. So I'm fine with making the motion, Mr. Graves, to work with you on that process. But I would ask that we speed that up and consider a special meeting to get that done, just because I don't want to expose us to any more liability.
Whatever the board's wishes are.
Is that fair with you, Trustee Chairman, Trustee Rivers?
And I would like to go back, as it was touched on earlier, the number of meetings, the time, and what all has been invested in this. And right now, what we have with the ODOT study and all that, is happening, positives that have been brought forward for all the work and efforts that have been brought into this. So we need to make some revisions, we need to update some things, make some changes for the better. I support that, but there has been our zoning commission and our staff, I know Ms. Bonnie have invested a lot into this, I'm all for making it better. But there's been a lot of input and a lot to get to this, and I'm sure we'll get the corrections made that we needed to go forward and be a success.
The moratorium just pauses, allows the township to really dig in and reconsider. Making changes incrementally as we find out is it's not going to, I don't think, be a sustainable approach for applicants to the overlay or for residents. So I think that it's in the best interest to do that. And I do recognize that a lot of hard work was put into it. The concern I have is that, again, the foundation for that was flawed. And so, from the onset, it's not the fault of anyone that the staff that worked on it, the zoning commission, or anyone else. It's external to that. And I think a moratorium is the best way. So I'll make a motion to have Mr. Graves, as Township Council, develop a resolution for a moratorium on the Route 23 overlay district in Orange Township.
Chairman, I keep waiting. Sorry. How long do you want the moratorium to last? I would like that to be made part of the motion. My personal preference would be that it be no longer than 6 months. And obviously if we get revisions made, that could be lifted prior to, but I think the board as a legislative body needs to, as part of your motion, give the time length of the moratorium.
I would say the end of the calendar year, so election year. So, I mean, that way the new board comes in.
January 1st.
That new board comes in, they can decide what they're going to do.
Do we have any, is there any requirements or anything new, as far as new applications?
We do not have any new applications.
And don't, I mean, you just said to not do a motion. Don't we need to have this legally put together properly?
Correct. So,
At a special meeting, and we can give them some time to put this together.
That's what we're proposing.
that's what we're doing, and you can always change that time frame. And once I get the resolution, but I just wanted at least initially some direction as to what.
My preference would be the end of the year.
Okay.
The new board's coming in, they can decide how they want to move forward.
And the board would be free to obviously alter that resolution, change the contents I'm assuming it's going to be a special meeting. Right.
Second? Mr. Gumbel?
Yes.
Ms. Trantow?
Yes.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
We didn't give that a resolution number? Are we doing that as a consensus
That would be-
item? No.
Let's do resolution 3
The
of
resolution.
There you go. Thank you.
And I will coordinate with the board and our council for the special meeting date.
And so I have that clear for the record. 21-309 will be authorizing legal counsel,
309 is, yes, 309 is.
authorizing legal counsel to draft a moratorium on the planned overlay district.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee, are you? Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Some help to get into that too, going through it. They answered that question. They did. One of the meetings that came up with the two-wheelers, they didn't expect them to be. You couldn't navigate it.
Good night.
Mr. Angelo.
Recess.
I'm going to take a 5. Make a motion for a 5-minute recess.
Are we gonna do that? Yeah.
Call the meeting back to order. Make a motion to call the meeting back to order.
Mr. Grumble?
Yes.
Ms. Taranta? Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
All right. So I think there's one agenda change that we still have. Ms. Bonnie, if you want to go through that real quick.
Yeah, just so the expressive graphics and signs on the consent agenda, there is an error in the cost, so it's actually $10,728.36. In addition to that, I would like to add another item to the consent agenda, and that is in regards to Continental Office. And the total for that is $50,715, and that would be funded through our CARES.
And that would be through CARES?
Yes.
What's that for?
That is for the modular walls for the office.
And then can I piggyback on the consent agenda, a few other things? This is where we missed you, Ms. Bunting. On consent agenda item A, the date should read approving for the meeting September 20th. At the top where it says meeting held on September 20th, it should read September 20th. And in consent agenda item A, it should read that you're approving the electronic record of proceedings of the regular meeting held on September 7th, not August 16th. And then also under consent agenda B, I just added the fund names for the ones that were missing. For example, Jermaine Ford is parks. I added gas tax to the salt. The salt purchase is coming from the gas tax fund. I added roads to Voss Brothers. So I just added the fund names because that's kind of consistent with how we've done it in the past. Anybody needs to know what those fund names are, please just let me know.
Next item on the agenda, we're going to have Mr. Tom Hurt from Preservation Parks. Thank you for coming.
Well, thanks for providing time to provide you with an update at the top one during the show. So what I'd like to do is just give you I'll keep it brief. Look at what we were working on last year and what we got going on this year. And will I be able to advance? Or is that something that you can do? Just hit OK on the security room, and you'll be good. Also, just trying to, you don't want to advance on that.
I got you.
You got me?
We got it.
That's wonderful. All right, go ahead and get to the next slide. Just a quick look at a couple of things we got going on. And just wanted to point out that we're talking about the future park here, which I'll talk about, the Camel Creek Park. We're working on Hickory Woods right now, add on to that. And there's this future park up here, that's a life estate that we currently have. And just within the last 3 weeks, the individual who is still there told us they'll be vacating that life estate in the spring, so we'll be able to start master planning that park. Go ahead. Last year, 2020, during COVID, we saw a huge increase in park visitation. So we were real glad that we can provide folks with the opportunity. So we were real glad that we were there for folks when they needed us. Attendance this year has dropped down to pre-pandemic attendance, which we're wiping our brow over because it really put the pressure on us last year. Go ahead.
How do you track attendance?
We have car counters at the entrance drive. So we count the cars and we figure 2.5 people per car. And so we arrive at that. So as you know, we've been acquiring property along Bell Canyon Road for the past 6 years. And in fact, we just completed that acquisition this year for the yellow property there above the Red Star. And we are currently, if you go to the next slide, We're currently looking at master planning the area around the barn right now. We've hired a firm, an engineering and architectural firm. They're looking at the cost of renovating that barn and turning it into a year-round facility so that we can use it for programming and the community can use it to rent for whatever social purposes they would like to. We're actually going to move the barn into the property about 60 feet just because of the road widening and sewer coming down here and the bike trail. You notice the dashed yellow lines, that along the road, the dashed yellow lines indicates the bike trail is proposed to go on Bell Canyon Road, and that we want to tie into that bike trail, of course, providing access into the park. We anticipate this master plan being completed within the next couple of weeks, and we need to have a public meeting at that time to share our ideas with the public at large. There'll be a picnic shelter there, there'll be a farm team, playground, parking, of course, and our typical hiking trails and that sort of thing. Go to the next slide. And this is a shot of the stream renovation project that we teamed up on last year. You know, the Township trustees participated in that financially, and so we were able to move that tributary away from Bell Canyon Road and straighten it out away from the road, but providing some sinuosity, establishing a floodplain, improving water quality, and habitat protection by doing this. Thank you for your participation on the project with us. It's going along really well. You go to the next slide. This is an exciting land acquisition opportunity that we just started on. This is 475 acres, just a little bit outside of the village of Sunbury along Route 3. 175 acres. We just purchased phase 1 in the grain, phase 2 next year. And again, looking at acquiring this property over 6 years, given our current funding. We are going to be on the ballot in November for land acquisition levy, which will allow us to acquire the property in 4 years and open it up quicker. So, go to the next slide. There's some unique habitat on the property. We've got a stream that cuts through property on the west side, old trees see there, and it's got a lot of great habitat, a really nice stream. And go to the next slide. There's a historic schoolhouse on the property as well. A perfect schoolhouse that opened up in 1893. The family who owns this property, Walt Camp and Sandal, have actually been renovating the schoolhouse. They have all the original desks, the schoolmaster desks, and all those kinds of things that they are donating to us, and we're going to continue the renovation process. We'll be able to do cultural history programming there as well as natural history programming, so that's great. Next slide. Hickory Woods Park, which is on Pollock Road, just south of the city of Delaware. This is an artist rendering what it will look like. Phase 1 was completed last year, entrance drive, parking area. Phase 2 is currently underway, which is trails. The pond is in. We established a sledding hill, and the site has been graded for the building. The building will be a year-round facility again that folks will be able to rent for social activities that we'll be able to use for programming. And that will probably be like phase 3 or phase 4. Slide. And we were able to acquire 21.5 acres on Lewis Center Road right across from Sharmar Reservation. This is exciting because it connects directly to the Ohio Erie Trail, which parallels Route 3 there. We're going to create a trailhead there and also going to offer trailside camping for people who are through biking on the Ohio Erie Trail. And what's really great about this is not only is this trail serving the county and the state, but the section of the Ohio Erie Trail in Delaware County is going to be part of the National Rail Trail, going from Washington, D.C. to Seattle, Washington. So the folks will be coming cross-country through Delaware County. Next slide. We were donated 22 acres along Route 315 and Hole Road along the One Tangent River. We've just opened that up as Sycamore Run, which provides canoe and kayak access to the One Tangent as well as fishing access. Next slide. And we continue working on things at the farm. The corn crib in the lower right-hand picture was built last year using all the hand tools that were available to farmers in the 1930s. There's some additions to the house, and we've added more fencing because we're increasing our livestock there. adding an hour and a half this year, along with our hogs and sheep. Next slide. And of course, the Ohio Erie Trail. Spending a lot of time and energy on that over the last number of years. So we manage about 7 miles of it now. We built 2.5, next slide. We built 2.5 miles of the trail last year. So this section really goes up to 21 within several years. So we built 2.5 miles last year. Currently building 1.4 miles this year. And next year we'll come into the village of Sunbury, which is about 1,500 foot on a stretch of right away that goes over Big Park and includes a railroad trestle. And so we'll finally be into the village there. And the dotted red lines that you see at the upper right-hand corner, that is what Licking and Knox County are working on right now. And once that's in, we'll be able to connect to Sandburg and beyond. So things are really falling into place as far as the trail goes. And we've been very fortunate to receive a lot of grant funding and help from Rick Carfagna, getting some funding from the state, as well as using our own levy money to accomplish the acquisition and construction of the Ohio Erie Trail in that section. Next slide. And last year, our staff built an aviary at Deer Haven Park. Deer Haven is the location for the Amy Park Breeder Bird Sanctuary. And so adding the aviary really complements the programming that we do associated with the bird sanctuary. We've been working with this organization called Ohio Nature Education for years. They really rehabilitate injured wildlife, particularly birds, but they also have a lot of birds that can't be released. And so we now house some of those that are rotated in and out every few months, and it's all part of our education program. So that's something that is new for us. Next slide. And we did a lot of restoration work. So much of the land requires agricultural land. So we go in and we plant hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of seedling trees, all the burlap trees, plant prairie and meadow grasses and flowers. We also remove a lot of the tilelands in the field so we can reestablish normal type of full hydration that we normally, hydrate soils, I should say, normally occur in these fields. Next slide. We also spend a lot of time and energy on creating wetlands. Unfortunately, most of the wetlands in the county disappeared, and of course, this is very important for water quality and not only general habitat restoration, but also for wildlife as well. Next slide. So last year we couldn't do in-person programming, so we went virtual with a lot of things we did. The Winter 100 was the first winter program where we encouraged people to either walk 100 miles or 100 kilometers, and if you did achieve one of those distances, you received a sticker. And we had 1,400 people participated in that program. The person wanted a sticker. Something to keep in mind if you get into different public programming, stickers are a great incentive. We did winter letterbox. We've done summer letterbox for years. Had about 600-700 people participate in that. And we also did a Discover Delta scavenger hunt. So we were still able to connect with folks, even though we couldn't meet them in person. Next slide. And we rolled out a new logo, the Fox Leaf logo. We wanted something that would set us apart, something that would really catch the eye. And so we hired a consultant, worked with staff, and we said no trees, no nuts and berries, no rivers, and eventually settled on the Fox Leaf logo there. It's been very well received so far. Next slide. We discovered, well, we already know that the parks are too small. And last year, of course, parking was a premium, so we're beginning to expand parking lots. And this is something we're able to accomplish in the Sharma Ridge reservation, basically doubling the size of what we have. We've done some work at Gallup Farm with our program inside the granary, adding overhangs front and back so we can increase that level of programming space. And then lower right hand corner just shows you what the new logo looks like in the park size. Next slide. And that's the end. Thank you very much for the opportunity for the brief update. Like I said, we will be on the ballot with a land acquisition right. That was the other interesting thing that happened during, well, from the fall of 2019 through last year, is we had several families come to us wanting the property to become part of the purchase. So we're talking about 800 acres right now. We're still in discussion with 2 other families, so we'll get that to that. We're looking at approximately $24 million. Acres, another 10 and a half, 13 to develop it. So the board decided to ask those to approve that 14.7 million, which will add $15.92 for $100,000 for 10 years, so that we could purchase those properties. And those, the landowners know that it's contingent on passing the law. If they do that, then the line, property appraisal.
Thank you.
Well,
The acquired property up Bell Canyon, however that happens, when you, I guess, when you assume control over the property. And it was the trees, planted quite a few of the original type trees that have been there, native trees. How many did you put more township, you know?
well, usually 30,000 seedlings, and then probably close to 500 golden willow trees, which are
I
6.
remember seeing that, just when we were around.
And then, acres of metal plantings.
Tom, you have done a great job with Innovation Park. They're really truly a gem.
Thanks.
Have you had an opportunity to meet Mr. Bowers?
Yes, we've been talking briefly, and we're going to continue the discussion. So we're going to get together at some point in the next couple of weeks.
Are you okay if we share your presentation with our residents?
Sure.
And then if you have any information, if you could provide that to us as well.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Are you able to download it?
I will download that.
Okay.
But I'll leave that.
Yeah.
Trustee Grumbles, I would, and I apologize to interrupt, but I would like to request a 5-minute recess for you to talk to the, or for the chair to talk to the council.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can listen for another recess, 5 minutes.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto? Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Make a motion to return to regular session.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
All right. So one last agenda change, a resolution here related to the moratorium for the Route 23 corridor overlay district. I'm going to read the entire resolution. Make a motion to approve resolution 21-314 to impose a moratorium until January 1st, 2022 on all applications in the Orange Township Route 23 corridor overlay district, Article 20 of the zoning resolution, effective immediately. The purpose of the moratorium is to allow township staff and legal counsel to review the provisions of Article 20 and recommend revisions.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Rivers?
With the current state of the board for the next 90 days, we're not going to attract the quality commercial development that I know we can, so I'm going on with this just because of that, so yes.
All right. Back to the consent agenda. Any questions on the consent agenda items of concern to kick off? Make a motion to approve resolution 21-315 and 21-316 of the consent agenda.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Gets us to development today.
Yes, thank you. I do have a meetings report to share. So this evening, the trustees did hear the Sheets overlay application. Decision was made to denial that application. Following that, tomorrow, Tuesday, September 21st, the Zoning Commission does have a special organizational meeting that will to approve several pending minutes that we have and also award the contract for the zoning resolution rewrite. So we are very excited to start that project, and we're happy with our selection. Following that, on Tuesday, September 28th at 7 p.m., the Zoning Commission will be hearing Evans Farm, the single-family and planned commercial amendments. That will be their third hearing, and hopefully we can wrap that up then. Following that, the Board of Zoning Appeals for Thursday, October 14th at 6 p.m. There are 3 applications. The first is an area variance for the sanctuary of the lakes to allow for construction of a deck. The second one is an area variance for signage over on Powell Road. And the last one, which we did not add at the time of this report, is the conditional use and variance for the new monument sign for ATS. And following that, I would actually, if I can skip to item C, I apologize just because of the way this is lined up, but I would like to withdraw my request to schedule withdraw the Zoning Commission's request to schedule the hearing for the Route 23 corridor overlay district text amendments at this time. And then the last item under the zoning report is discussion of possible action regarding senior zoning officer. I would like to temporarily increase our senior zoning officer, Jeff Beard's hourly rate. As I have transitioned into the administrator role, Jeff has taken on a lot more responsibility and has been a really great help to the zoning department. And I believe he should be rewarded for that. And this is one example tonight. I couldn't do it without him.
President as well, so.
Any questions about the rate of pay?
No.
Okay. Make a motion to approve resolution 21-317, temporarily increasing senior zoning officer Jeff Beard's hourly pay.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Franco?
Yes.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I think respond regarding the zoning commission meetings, I am optimistic and hopeful we can start to work with the council on getting that overlay, recommendations and revisions proposed as soon as possible. I don't expect it to be too extensive after what we've learned in the past year or so. Operations.
Yes, thank you, Board. First thing on the operations agenda this evening is the North Road Trail Connection Project. This is a project that required the acquisition of right-of-way from 3 properties along the west side of North Road. This will ultimately connect Lewis Center Road all the way up to Shanahan Road. Again, it's another project that originated before my time here, but we did open bids last week and wanted to bring before the Board our apparent low bid that met all the consideration, all the thresholds, and was within range for IDIG to complete this construction project. The project will begin almost immediately, pending notice of award and commencement from staff tomorrow. This purchase order was also on the consent agenda as well, so again, did come in within range of expectations.
Any questions? No. Make a motion to approve resolution 21-318, award bid and authorize director of operations to sign bid documents and enter into an agreement with IDIG Construction Group regarding the North Road Bike Trail connection.
Second. Mr. Grumble?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto? Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Other item on the agenda tonight for operations is the update for the Parks Master Plan project. Last week culminated an important phase in the project, which was the culmination of all of our stakeholder meetings as well as our open house, which I know several of the Board attended. Some of the items in the back of the room here are some of the interactive activities that existed during the open house that provided us a lot of great feedback from our residents for that night last Monday. The next step in the process will be for our consulting firm, Branstetter & Carroll, to evaluate and compile all that information and all the feedback that we received from the stakeholder meetings and the open house that will generate our next conversation with our steering committee to kind of continue the phase and continue the process of building up the Parks Master Plan. Just for historical purposes, that is roughly an 8-9 month process. We're hoping that is on track now. We should have that thing wrapped up and ready to present to the Board sometime around after the first of the year, hopefully in the March-ish neck of the woods. So hopefully the Board will be able to provide their feedback to Branstetter & Carroll as well, and I'll continue to keep you apprised of any developments with our steering committee meetings.
Anything else?
That is it for operations tonight. If there's any questions, happy to answer those as well.
When do you think you'll have the summary of the open house and everything out so we can report that back to the residents?
I expect that in the next couple of weeks. The consulting firm was out of state for for most of last week after they left here, so we have not had time to compile that and reconvene with them. But I do anticipate that coming soon, which will again stimulate the next meeting for our steering committee to get together, hear those results, which we'll obviously share with the Board as well, and then work towards the next steps.
And what was our turnout for the open house? Was it okay?
Open house, I think, was a little low. There was a lot of unexpected road closures that night with the railroad that we were not prepared for. So we had several dozen residents attend, which was very helpful. The steering committee, the 10 meetings for a steering committee the week before were incredibly helpful. Those included neighboring townships, administrators, some of our local program providers, a lot of residents with specific interests in certain projects, such as bike trail connections, pickleball, tennis, soccer fields, things of this nature. We got a lot of great feedback from those groups to help develop what the next steps are going to be as we envision our parks for the next decade.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board. I'm honored to come in front of you tonight to request appointments of 4 full-time firefighters, the 4 slots that we voted on last meeting to appropriate for. And the members are Mr. Anthony Grubb, Mr. Willie J. Harris Jr., Mr. Sun Dang, and Mr. Tyler Stutes. All 4 individuals are very excited about the potential of becoming part of the Orange Township Fire Department in Orange Township and what we are continuing to build in our township and in the department. So I hope you will consider the 4 individuals.
Any questions from the board? Make a motion to approve resolution 21-319, appointment to position of full-time firefighter paramedic, Anthony E. Grubb.
Mr. Grumble?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve resolution 21-320, appointment to position of full-time firefighter paramedic for Willie G. Harris Jr.
Mr. Grumble?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve resolution 21-321, appointment to position of full-time firefighter paramedic for Son T. Day.
Mr. Grumble?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
Yes.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve resolution 21-322, appointment to position of full-time firefighter paramedic retiree students.
Mr. Grumble?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto? Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
I would like to thank you, everybody, for consideration of these 4 and also from the fire department as a whole and all the support that we've been receiving on building our department and continuing to strive to make it better. So thank you very much.
Ms. Crack?
Okay, just 2 quick things tonight. The first is a liquor license, whether or not the board would like to hold a hearing or not to hold a hearing for Condado Tacos, 31 LLC. And the second item is just continuing to kind of clean up our bank accounts. We have a park account that, from what I can tell, was originally set up for deposits from the pool, but that really isn't needed because we code them to the revenue code for the pool. So it's identified as pool revenue. It doesn't really need to go into its own account because it's managed through the fund. So requesting there's no money in the account. There hasn't been any money in the account since I look back 3 years of the been deposits. Okay, so I'm requesting to close that, and that's all I got.
I give my consent to not have a hearing.
Also.
Thank you.
All right. Any new administrative things?
Well, I do have that resolution for you
Oh, sorry.
for closing the existing park account.
Make a motion to approve resolution 21-323, authorization for Orange Township fiscal officer to close existing park account, secondary bank account, ending in account number 08.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Triento? Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm happy to give a quick update on some of the big projects that we're working on. We are hopefully having the first draft of the newsletter in place this week. We started our training with Food Solutions. There's a lot of things going on. We began our interviews for the senior HR manager, so hopefully to have that come in place soon. I think the next board meeting there will also be some policy recommendations as far as military leave goes and temporary leave due to the pandemic. And I'm happy to answer any questions the board has, but there's a lot in the works, and we did start doing those project update lists, and I plan on sending that out this week.
How's the Food Solutions training?
We held our first one just with the administrative or the supervisor level. I think we have a lot of ideas in place. Actually, our newest project manager, Alex, has been involved with a similar software in the past, so he's a little geeked out about it, to say the least. And Jess Hewitt has also been stepping in too. And our next steps will be training with the technicians, so that would be the parks road maintenance staff.
Good. Old business as well. I know you sent a note from the prosecutor. The question I asked was about whether specifically the DD building work was discussed or disclosed or approved. And I did not see that in any of the documents that I've seen. I don't know if any other board members have any comments there.
No, I also. So, what we talked about had nothing to do with making the township hall a community center, the DD building, deeding over the township hall to the Dillon County Finance Authority. So there was no discussion on that. The only thing that the board gave approval on was to assess the township hall for additional office space. So work was performed without board authority.
I'm unaware of any conversation of deeding anything.
Sending some emails, right?
I think that was an option that was thrown out there, but it was never going to move forward. Someone sent an email saying, "Here, here's an idea." I don't think that's really
So
an
somebody
action.
saw that then?
So I'm aware there was an email sent, but it was simply, "Hey, here's an idea as far as creative financing." I don't see why someone. I'm sure people send you emails all the time with different ideas and thoughts, but
There was a result of a study done that was not authorized by the board. My recommendation is to submit this to the Ethics Commission to review. It's a large amount of money. I do feel like we're going to need to pay it. The work was done. I would like to get advice on how to handle that.
The audit of the state might be a better starting point.
but the work that we're doing right across the hall, that was never approved. We never discussed that at a meeting. We approved the funding, and our staff did the right thing and moved forward with it. So I mean, I would never come in and give our staff brief about something. That's what we do. We approve funding. We give them the authority to make those calls. So, I mean, this was sent to the prosecutor's office. They said we need to pay the bill. There's nothing here. Absolutely nothing. I mean, are we going to really go back down this path again over a gallon of gas?
I don't necessarily think it needs to go to the Ethics Commission. I think that my concern is that it would lead to a potential finding later down the road. Just making sure we got in front of that. But as far as the Ethics Commission, I don't know that there would be anything that they would find on this. Not that I'm aware of. I think it would.
If the auditor wants to look at it, I'm fine with that. But
Yeah, I think that-
I'm confident there's nothing here.
That would be the only area that I could. I just didn't want to approve an expense that we would end up having to deal with later on. If we can get the answer up front and get clarity up front, then that would be good. And the part is accurate about an email discussing deeding over these properties. The part that I think that was a concern is that the amount of money spent performing actual work on a building that wasn't even the township's. And that's the part where I think we need to get clarity.
But all those funds were approved, and if you go through all the emails, there was dialogue and discussion as far as COVID, being able to space out in other locations. I mean, as the board, we give our staff the ability to go out and do the work. We're not here day to day. That's not our role as board members. So there's nothing here. No one did anything wrong.
I don't think there's any problem with that, but the direction was looking at Township Hall itself.
And there were several offers and different options, things that were considered, but I mean, that's kind of brainstorming and putting out there different things. I mean, the option as far as with the creative financing was something that would save a ton of money on work done at the Township Hall. So if someone has a suggestion, a way to save money, there's no harm. You can't throw an option out there, and if you don't like it,
There
don't
was
like
no
it.
cost associated with a suggestion email. That's not a concern. The concern for me is the work product completed. And I think that the building next door was happening, if I'm not mistaken, that space was included in some of the studies as far as reworking it and turning it into office space, if I'm not mistaken.
Everything here was approved. And as far as with the other structures, that was one of our partners giving us an option that was trying to help us out. So I don't get why we're stuck on this.
I think it's just because it wasn't what was approved.
But I mean, like I said, we paid for the funding, we appoint other projects, we empower the staff, they go out and do the research and to come to us with a proposal. I mean, I think we just need to pay this bill and move on.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to pay it. I think the moving on part is where there's disagreement, and that's okay. It shouldn't be a very time-consuming decision for somebody to look at and tell us how to handle it. And I think that the request for me was all along to just make sure that we do that so that in the future it doesn't come back and turn into something we have to address. Just because the direction and the paperwork and the minutes and everything else is very clear on this township hall. If we expand beyond that, I'm of the opinion that it should be discussed before it's expensed. I think that's something that, board members probably have their own, obviously tonight each of us have a different interpretation of it, but that's where we need to seek help and be clear. When the board has something that they can't run on, just ask for help. There's resources out there. We'll get an answer and move on.
If it makes everyone feel better, have the auditor look at it, I'm more than fine with that. But again, there's nothing here.
Well, I'll let them determine that. Just like I said, to make sure there's been some awkward findings in years past, and this is one that I just don't want to have to deal with in the future. Make a motion to approve resolution 21-324, authorize the issuance of a then and now purchase order to Florida Newman Engineering.
Second.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
No.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve resolution 21-325, authorize the issuance of a then and now purchase order to Florida Newman Engineering.
Second.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Tranto?
No.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
And Ms. Kraft, I asked that we got the prosecutor's direction to pay, we paid. However, there's still some concern over the work that was done. I think we need to get that over to the auditor just to have them glance over the facts and make sure there's no issue here.
Okay.
If you could let us know as soon as possible, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. New business. Have a contract here that we all received for the administrator. Any questions with that?
I do not.
Mr. Anto? Okay. Michelle, do you have any comments?
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity and to serve the board and our community. Let us know you. Thank you. We have a really great team here. I can't thank them enough. Everybody steps in and helps out when we're short-staffed. And, it's never, this is my role. I won't help you in this aspect, but we're all a team and we work really well together. So I'm thankful for that.
Congratulations and thank you for all you do.
Yeah. You've done a nice job bringing the team together, and the culture of the team, the building has definitely improved with your leadership. Very grateful for everything you've done, and to the team for working with you. Really happy to see this happen. Without further ado, I'm going to make a motion to approve resolution 21-326, appointing Michelle Bonney to serve as the township administrator and authorizing and directing the board of trustees to execute the employment agreement regarding the same. I'm going to read it because I think with this I need to do that. Whereas with resolution 21-164 adopted May 16, 2021, the board of trustees of Orange Township approved planning and zoning director Michelle Bonney to serve as acting township administrator while the township searched for its next administrator, and whereas since being appointed acting township administrator, Michelle Bonney has performed exceptionally and proven that she is capable of serving the board as well as the township's residents and businesses in this important role. And whereas RC 505.031A1 provides the Board of Township Trustees may appoint a township administrator who shall be the administrative head of the township under the direction and supervision of the board, and who shall hold office at the pleasure of the board. The Board of Trustees wants to exercise the statutory power of removing the acting designation from Ms. Bonney's current title and appoint Michelle Bonney as the next Orange Township administrator. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of Orange Township, Delaware County, State of Ohio, Michelle Bonney is hereby appointed pursuant to Revised Code 505.031 to serve as the township administrator. The Board of Trustees is authorized and directed to execute an employment agreement substantially the same for and content as the agreement attached here to is Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference with Michelle Bond. It's hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this board concerning related to the passage of this resolution were adopted in an open meeting of the board, and that all deliberations of the board and any decision-making bodies of which township which resulted in such formal actions were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements of the state of Ohio.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Taranto? Mr. Rivers?
Yes.
Congratulations. Make a motion to approve resolution 21-327. Meeting adjourned.
Mr. Grumbles?
Yes.
Ms. Taranto? Mr. Rivers?
Yes.